The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to the Fine to Fab show with Lisa Lieberman-Wang, helping women reclaim their inner peace and power, going from feeling fine to being fab, fabulous, awesome, beautiful, serving to empower you to break through the barriers that weigh you down, to live an authentic life that is healthy, happy, and free. Now, here's Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lieberman-Wang, your trusted guide on your journey from feeling fine to being fab. The Fine to Fab show is committed to helping women break through the barriers that weigh them down to live an authentic life that is healthy, happy, and free, and we're happy you're here with us. I am ecstatic to be sharing the time with a very good friend, and you'll be finding out that she'll be dear to your heart too, and I'll share a little more about her in a moment. But I want to make sure you have an opportunity while we're on to be able to connect with King Pinyin and myself, and you can do that live by Skyping into W4WN Radio and put it on mute because you will be live and waiting to be acknowledged, or calling in at 561-422-4365. You know, here we have a community. It's an active community. If you would like to stay connected, you can text the keyword Fine to Fab to 90210 and hit send. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter at Lisa Lieberman-Wang, and check out our website at finetofab.com for the blog and future calls, as well as other shows and things that are happening in the area. You know, one of the great things is having different people on the show gives me the opportunity to share with you that, you know, everybody has a story. We all come from a past. And sometimes it's the struggles and the journey that makes it so miraculous and phenomenal for what we've been able to achieve today. And my guest today is a beautiful woman. Her name is King Pinyin. She's a CEO and founder of Agneto Consulting and Ignite Your Life, LLC. She's an entrepreneur, success coach, speaker, author, woman of profound faith who's mentored and inspired many men and women to reach their peak in life through seminars, coaching, workshops, speaking engagements. She is a co-author of so many books. I'm going to give you several of them, from Mastering the Art of Success with people you know and love, Jack Canfield, Les Brown, and Mark Victor Hansen. Also co-author of Concrete Jungle with Bob Proctor, Mark Leader, and Steve Rizzio. Co-author of Words of Wisdom with Brian Tracy and Dr. John Gray, co-author of Leadership, Helping Others to Succeed, and No Winner Ever Got There Without a Coach. And I think all those titles say a lot as well. She's been profiled in Success from Home magazine and also Your Business at Home magazine several times over the years as a top earner in direct sales industry. She's been featured on Wisdom Keys with Dr. Mike Murdoch, airing on the World Network, Dish Network, Direct TV. Oh my God, I can keep going on. Been on at Home Las Vegas, The Morning Blend Show, KTNV Channel 13, ABC affiliates in Los Angeles as a successful entrepreneur and author. Pinyin's mission is to teach and encourage people across the globe to break free from disempowering beliefs and to explore the unlimited potential that lies within the human soul. She is also a double platinum president advisory council member for 5 Links, having come to America from a third world country and now at the peak of success within an Inc. 500 direct sales company. She stands as living testimony that your past or present does not have to dictate your future. King, I'm really happy you're here with us.
Hey, Lisa, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I'm happy you're here. And I think it's so funny that, you know, that this is a thing for me with everything you've gone through, or even to be here. It's such an amazing story I know you're going to share with us today. And I always expect that when you hear the word king, people might have expected that we'll have a man here, and here we have a very, very female woman. So King, and we know that you have another name, but you go by King. But I would love you to share, we've heard so many great successes from what I just shared with everybody, but can you tell us a little bit more about your background so we can fully understand where you came from and what made this journey so miraculous?
Absolutely, Lisa. Thank you so much once again for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to becoming fabulous with you because right now I'm fine, and so
No,
I
you're
know I'm going to be. I know I'm going to be fabulous in an hour after speaking with you, and I want to congratulate you on all that you do to empower women because I believe that women are the grassroots, and when women take action, the world is going to be a better place. My name is King. Well, that's my middle name, actually. My first name is Dean, a beautiful name, but I think that just like you mentioned, when I was growing up, my friends became intrigued at why I was called King and not Queen. And so the name King just stuck. And my first name, Dean, just kind of disappeared in the background. I'm originally from Africa. I'm actually from a royal family in Africa, a country called Cameroon. And I always jokingly say that my dad wanted a son, right? Because he's from a royal family. And over the years, generation after generation, they always had male children as the firstborn. Now, I know it may not matter so much to you and our listeners, but in Africa, it's a big deal. It's like the first child has to be a male child so they can carry on the family name and history and blah, blah, blah. And then here I come, centuries in, and I show up a woman. And so my dad jokingly says to punish me, he named me King. So I have to explain to the world why I embarrassed him and showed up as a woman. you know. So of course, I grew up in Africa, went to college in Africa and then finished college. And just like every young person in Africa, being a third world country, our dreams and aspirations is always to come out west, especially to the U.S., just to get, ourselves to be able to accomplish our goals and our dreams. So for me, it happened about 14 or so years ago, finished school and decided to come out here to become wealthy because America is called the land of opportunities, right? So I come here brand new from Africa. And in my mind, I'm thinking that as soon as my plane landed in JFK, I was going to become rich because I assumed, hey, I'm in America, right? So there must be money on the streets, money all over, just trees growing with dollar bills, So I actually had my bags with me to just come, take some, pack it in, and then go back home and become a multi-millionaire. Well, I landed at JFK. First of all, it was winter. I came in October of that year. It was very, very cold. And I was coming from the tropics, Africa. I'd never been here before and never been to any place nearly as cold as what I experienced in New York on that day. And as for the money on the streets, that's like, I never saw it. Let's just say that's like, it's forgotten because I went around for almost 6 months before I saw a penny on the ground. And girl, believe it or not, I picked it up because I was like, well, somebody left a penny for King, right? So, so when I came here back then, my dream was, like I mentioned, to become a very successful person, but I just did not know how. With all the shock, the culture shock, the differences in how we operate back home and here, I ended up in the IT field, even though I'd never seen a computer before. But I came out here and I found out very quickly that nursing was not going to be for me, even though a majority of my friends were in nursing. I went out to a nursing home once and the sight of sick people, dying and all of that just scared me. And so I decided to try out the IT field and ended up as a database administrator, working so many hours a day just to make ends meet. And, finally figured out that a job was not what it was cooked up to be. And so I decided to try out entrepreneurship. And that's how I'm talking to you today.
That's incredible. Now, you know what happens? A lot of people think, at least I would have thought, coming from royalty back home, that why would you even leave, one, and two, that financially or however you would have been set, and why would you want to start over?
I always like to qualify royalty back home. Yes, you do have the land, and in the area where you grow up, it seems like you're quote unquote wealthy, but wealth is relative. If I may put it, because having land and cattle and old houses and stuff like that, to me it was not really wealth. And back home where I'm from, there's several royal families. I mean, I come from a country that has about, gosh, I can't even say hundreds of different villages, like we call them. So my family, even though it was a royal family, was not the political royal family. And back in Africa, it takes a lot to get a job. It's not uncommon to find graduates, with a master's degree driving cabs, the cab drivers, just because it's a third world country. That's what you got to recognize. It's a third world developing country, and the opportunities are very few. And 9 out of 10 times, only people with the political powers will get a job. And so it's just so much easier for people to come out here and try to make a name for themselves.
And it's funny because when we had met, we met through Tony Robbins' Platinum Program, and I think it's almost a year and a half ago already, went to South Africa. We were in 5 different countries, and we did some volunteer work. And I know a lot of our plat partners did it also this year. It was incredible. Right. It was such an eye-opener because when we used to say, and it was an expression here, when you didn't eat your food, your mother would say, my mother did, people are starving in Africa. And mm-hmm. I used to think it was an expression, but it was literal. And we had gone to a school and volunteered, and there were 1,100 kids there that the one meal a day they got was showing up at school. And if you called it a meal, it was more like paste. It was like a porridge.
Yes.
And yes. I think a lot of people don't understand that. So thank you. The perspective is important. I think a lot of us, even hearing royalty, well, that means you had it good already,
Mm-hmm. Yes. You have it good, but it's really relative, like you say. And I know the Platt partners just came back from South Africa again. I missed out on the trip because I'd been to South Africa. But I like the fact that Tony takes the Platts over there. And I also like to encourage, people who can't afford to travel to Africa, because I think it gives you a different perspective on life. And for you who has been there, now you understand why it's so much easier for somebody from Africa, for instance, or even from a third world country to come into the U.S. and become a millionaire, because they know where they came from, the drive. People always ask me, where's this drive coming from? And I'm like, well, if you're from where I'm from, honey, you're going to be driving hard, because I know where I come from, and I take nothing for granted.
Absolutely. What was some of the challenges you had to overcome, even besides the fact that you didn't find the money on the street? What were some of the things you had to overcome when you got here, or even making that decision?
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you for 4 hours about that. See, my first major obstacle, and so many people are not even aware of this because they're born here. The very first obstacle that I had, and all of us have, is the accent, is the language barrier. See, I'm from Cameroon, and our main language is French, right? And then even at home, we spoke English, but it was not really English like American English. At best, it was British English. So coming out here and just trying to communicate was such a problem for me. I remember coming here, and of course, my now husband, who was fiancé back then, was already here. And so we went out shopping, of course, about 2 days after I got here. And it was just such a struggle for me to communicate with the lady in the fitting room. You know what we had to do finally? She had to go get my husband, and we had to communicate. He had to translate from me to her just because of the accent. And 9 out of 10 times, just because you have an accent, you already have a strike against you. Well, I came out here, had the strikers, I was not from here, but then every time I opened my mouth to speak, that was already a good reason to disqualify me for a job. And I think that's why you see so many immigrants, especially I can speak for Africa because that's where I'm from. I think that's why you see so many of us working in the nursing homes, for instance, because, hey, you just got to take us. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So the language barrier was a big major one for me. But then also, I think just trying to fit into the society was a struggle, because I came back from I came here from a third world country. The way we did stuff back there culturally is so radically different from here. And I remember, I'll give you one that's just going to blow your mind away. You know, I came in, finally struggled. I actually had to take a voice and diction class just to be able to speak fluently, you know, in the way I'm speaking with you right now. I'm not 100% fluent, but I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much better than, 14 years ago when I came here. You know, I always had to sit in front of TV. I watched, every program on CNN, and I try to pronounce what I heard the way Americans did it. You know, you guys would say tomatoes, we'll say tomato, you would say water, I would say water, so it's like, even now, I have a friend who makes fun of me because I have a hard time saying Bob. I always say Bob because I'm calling him Bob because that's how we call Bob in Africa. But he goes, my name is Bob. I'm like, what's the difference? It's like, King, there's a difference between Bob and Bob, So I remember one of the things that I'll never forget. I had a very wonderful boss when I finally got a job. He was my manager, right? And I would never look him in the eye when I spoke to him, because not only was he my manager, he was also a man. And in Africa, women are not supposed to look an older man in the eyes when you're talking to them. It's seen as a sign of absolute disrespect. And so every time I try to speak with him, he'll come over to ask me a question, and my head was always bowed down. But the good thing was he was kind of familiar with cultural differences. And so one day he called me into his office and he says, I want to ask you a question. Why is it that you never look me in the face when you talk to me? And I go, because it's rude. And he laughed and he said, no, it's not. I'm like, well, that's not how I was brought up. You're older than me. You're my manager. I'm supposed to respect you and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, honey, the only way to respect me is to look me in the eye when I ask you a question and when you're talking to me. He said, because otherwise it seems as if you're lying and you're withholding something. And I was like, oh, really? So just little barriers like that was a struggle. And just the whole process of going to school also. I went to school and I had to pay tuition as an international student, which is gazillion times more than, local students or Americans would pay. And so it's just a whole lot. That's a whole lot, Lisa. I could go on and on about it, but it was a struggle. It really was.
And it's funny because there are so many like you said, cultural differences that we might not even be aware of. And what you might think as a limiting belief, thinking your accent would actually hold you back, I think it's so intriguing and beautiful. I like it. I like listening to the accent. So,
thank you. What I have to tell you, though, it has improved dramatically.
I think sometimes it's the differences that make us stand out. So stay who you are. Yeah. And I understand, because a lot of times we think that if we have to be a certain way. I think it's interesting also how you shared about not looking in the eye, because to me, it was always the complete opposite. And what your manager shared was such great information. There are so many people that, because of whether it be beliefs or their own being intimidated or fears, do not look at people in the eye and do not speak to them directly. And because of that, they don't actually advance, because we still are in business with people and people need that kind of connection.
Right. So, absolutely.
So, but that was a good lesson you got, and very quickly.
Oh, yes. I adjusted immediately. Very next day, actually. Very next day. I think now sometimes I tend to overdo it just because I'm trying not to make people feel like I'm withholding anything.
Yes. I actually love looking in people's eyes. I think it is the window to the souls, like they say.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
When you think about what it was like when you just got here and all the different things you had to go through, whether it be finances to get the money for tuition or it be the cultural differences in the language, that's really enough to even start with. How did you deal with the differences, finding your path? You said you started with working at nursing homes and ended up in IT. And what was that like?
It was tough. It really was, because I'd never seen a computer before, and much less work on a computer as a database administrator. But I had to survive. Where there's a will, there's a way. It took me a while to get comfortable with a basic Word document on a PC, and then I enrolled into a program. I ended up being an Oracle database administrator, so I enrolled into that program. It was scary in the beginning because I had to completely let go of any fears and inhibitions that I had, and just trust that I could do that. I could do it. Because I never saw myself as an IT person. I honestly was thinking about, becoming a CEO, or, working with a company as in a management position and stuff like that. Because my degree back home was in accounting and international marketing as a minor. So that's what I wanted to do. But I came here, and I think that the quest for wanting to be successful pushed me to do everything that I had to do to make it in the IT field. And I think that the fact that the startup salary was pretty attractive also made me give it my all. And there's still many people who are going through that here, just trying to make things out of nothing and having to learn a completely new, follow a completely new career path just to succeed.
Yes. And you went through a lot of different trials and tribulations and had to make some very big decisions after you got here and got married and stuff like that. What were some of the struggles you can think back that you had to face along the way, and some solutions or lessons you learned?
Oh, wow. I think the one that really stands out to me is, Sonny and I ended up getting married, and that was right after I had finished school as a database administrator, and I was just about to look for a job. And I became pregnant, and of course we were excited about having the baby. As long as the baby is in your stomach, you really don't know how much of a commitment it's going to take to raise a child, because I'd never raised a child before, and almost none of my friends had kids. We were all, having a good time coming up, and I was about one of the first ones to get pregnant. And then as soon as I had my son, who's now 11 years old, everything changed for me. I quickly found out that I was sleeping less at night, and, I really had almost no vacation time at my job. And then it became such a struggle. So my mom had to come over to help us out for a few months. And then when my mom left, it became such a struggle just for Sonny and I to juggle daycare, between us. I guess the biggest surprise to me was even how much daycare cost. And back then it was about $650 for a good daycare. But we could not afford that, between the rent, the bills, the car notes, and all of that. We literally could not afford to send my son to daycare. And so I remember my dad came over to visit and saw how much of a struggle it was for us to take care of this little boy. And so he made us promise him that we were going to have him take my son back home. Now, mind you, we're talking about Africa, right? It's a third world country, and the healthcare system, for anybody who knows about Africa, is horrible, to say the least. And here I am with my little baby, less than a year old, and being forced to send him back home to Africa just because Sonny and I could not afford to give him a decent life here. We wanted to, so we made my dad promise to stay a little longer so he could get all his shots, 1 year shots before taking him back home. Right. And Lisa, I remember, I never forget that day. If there's anything that drives me as much as I'm driven today, it is that day at the airport where Sonny and I had to let my father, anybody who is from a third world country understands why I keep saying my father, not even my mom, but my dad. My father taking my son to Africa, tens of thousands of miles away from me. just a year old, knowing that the healthcare there is not the best, but not being able to stop it because we could not afford to take care of him here. And that was the first day I saw my husband cry. And for an African man, that is a lot. You know, he stood there, and I was so much in shock because he was crying that I couldn't cry. I was numb. And we drove 2 hours back home from the airport, and without saying a word to each other. And let me tell you, my son was gone for almost a year, but I remember saying, God, just show me something that I can do, start a business, just something to turn my picture around, just to earn twice as much as I'm earning right now. So that was my biggest challenge here. I never forget that.
And the decision that had to come to even get to that point, I'm sure that was unbelievably painful, knowing that you're not necessarily sending him to the best place, but the best for what you can do at that time.
Absolutely. And also just that separation, because that's when you're bonding with your child, right? And it was even more painful. After a year, my husband was like, you know what? Enough is enough. He's going to come back. We're just going to have to struggle, drink water, eat bread all day, live on cheese, whatever it is, but he's going to have to come back. And the most painful part about it, Lisa, was he came back and did not know me or my husband.
Ooh.
The only person he knew was my mom, and he would not come to any one of us. And for a mom, that just it broke my heart. I was shattered. I have to tell you that. It was unbearable. And I promised myself that I would do whatever it takes to be able to provide for him and to never put myself in that situation again if I had other children.
Wow. And I'm sure, how hard was it for the little one as well as for yourselves? I mean, to not have that connection, knowing it's your own flesh and blood, that is really, it's disheartening, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah, and I always remember my husband telling me a story when he was young and they sent him to China to visit his grandfather, and he didn't want to go, and when his grandfather picked him up, he says, all I remember is I kicked him in the face. It's like he was afraid, It's like you think about a child, they don't know any different, and the first 5 years is when all of their beliefs and their values, everything is built. 55% of it is us, so
yes.
It's a critical time. It was a big decision you had to make. And I'm sure one that drove you and Sonny without a doubt. And before we talk about some of that, we're going to actually go to a break in just a moment. I just want to remind everybody that if they'd like to be able to speak to us live, they can Skype in at W4WN Radio, and be sure to come back and join us. And we're going to continue this with King and talk about some of the experiences that shaped her lives and some of the tools that she's actually applied to become as successful as she is today. So be sure to come back and join us, and we'll be with you in just a couple of minutes. Thank you.
There. This is your life talking to you. Yes, I know it's unusual. You think that you are just living your life, but now here I am. I just had to speak up if you and I are going to have the best. Yes, you've had some success with me, but things could be better. I know how tough it's been to fight depression and the habits that lead you to self-sabotage and disordered eating. I applaud you for all the professional and self-help remedies that you have tried so far. But let's face it, they haven't worked. But it's not your fault. I know. I was there, remember? It's time that you listen to me for a change. I want you to go to www.findtofabshow.com and find out how best-selling author Lisa Lieberman-Wang can make me, your life, fabulous. Right now, Lisa is offering a 10-week transformational program for us. Mention the show, and we'll get a really great discount. Hey, I'd go online and do it for us, but I don't have any fingers. So go ahead and go to www.findtofabshow.com, and let's make the changes we need today so we can have a better tomorrow.
Feeling tired and achy? Frustrated with allergies? Stress causing you high blood pressure? If you're ready to feel better, have more energy, maintain healthy cholesterol levels, joint flexibility and circulation, looking to reduce inflammation, support healthy glucose levels and sinus relief, plus so much more, Isotonics OPC3 is a food supplement made from a combination of bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, and citrus extract bioflavonoids, all found to be powerful antioxidants. Oligomeric proanthocyanins, OPCs, are bioflavonoids found in fruit, vegetables, and certain tree barks that provide exceptional nutritional benefits to the human body. Studies have shown OPCs to be up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Isotonics is delivered in an isotonic solution, which means that the body has less work to do in obtaining maximum absorption, as you can drink your vitamins. No pills, binders, or fillers. Buy now at www.amillionproducts.com. Isotonics OPC3.
If you've always wanted someone to connect with on your path to a happy, healthy you, I've got great news. In her #1 best-selling book, Find to Fab, 7 Secrets of a Successful Woman's Journey Away from Depression, Disordered Eating, and Self-Sabotage, Lisa Lieberman-Wang shares how you can experience your breakthrough just as she did. Start living an authentic life without blame, shame, or years of therapy. Buy now at findtofab.com.
Well, welcome back. I'm Lisa Lieberman-Wang, your trusted guide to go from feeling fine to being fab, and we have King Pinyin with us. And King, we were just talking about some of the big decisions that you had to make with your son, having to send him back to Africa and really driving you to do even more than you did before and looking to make America the land of opportunity, like you said. What were some of the big things, like the first steps and things you had to tell yourself to be able to get through this and make decisions?
Lisa, the first thing I had to tell myself was that I was enough, just as I was. And I still tell myself that today. I tell myself that I am enough just as I am. There's nothing lacking in me. Everything that I need for my journey has already been placed within me, and it was up to me to discover that and then walk through my path. I also had to tell myself that I believe in abundance. Like I know that the universe is abundant in nature, and because it is that way, I had to tell myself that I could be, do, and have anything that I wanted in life. All you need to do is set your mind to it and really believe it, and your world unfolds before you. And I also had to tell myself that I could unlearn all the things that I had known before so I could embrace America, because I was living here. This is going to be my home. I was going to make it my home for forever. And so I had to completely uproot what I knew to be right or wrong from Africa and totally embrace my lifetime here in the U.S. And that included being present enough to work on my accent, for instance, just to be able to communicate, because I always knew I wanted to be in some kind of communication business. I wanted to talk to people. I love people. I like to make connection. I like knowing about people, seeing how I could, equip, encourage, and empower them. And I did not want the accent or the language to be a barrier. I had to unlearn that. And I just had to tell myself, Lisa, that I was created in the image of God. And so I had everything within me to live the lifestyle of my dream, which is why in my first book, I wrote about overcoming limiting beliefs, because that's the reason why so many of us play small, because we forget who we are, but also most importantly, we forget whose we are. So I had to tell myself every day, and I still do, every day I get up in the morning and I tell myself that everything that I need for that day and for my journey is already within me, and it was up to me to dig deep to bring it forth.
And as far as even telling yourself that, I think is just amazing, and I have similar beliefs as you do. We've talked about that in the past. Just the fact that anything that we need comes with it from us, but coming from different means and a different culture, that is not even that's such a rarity, King, as you know, where people would give you every reason to say that couldn't be true, especially when you had to make big decisions of sending your son off or not seeing the land of opportunity the way you thought it would. You came here and there was no money on the street waiting for you. I mean, What did you do when it came to the points when you felt like you were being beaten down? I mean, what were some of the things you had to say to yourself or do to make sure that you were still moving forward? Because all the stuff you're saying, so many people, and I know you live it, you're absolutely the exception to the rule, but so many people know it, but they're unable to live it. They let things get in their way. What would you tell them?
I think that the first thing that I would say, Lisa, is that people got to stop being afraid. You know, when my back was completely up against the wall, I had to say, you know what? I'm already flat down. I'm broke. Everything is not the way I planned. So it can't get any worse than this. So I'm just going to keep trying new things that came my way. And because I was open and present, I had that one aha moment when I recognized that, for me, the job that I was working, even though it was great, was not going to set me financially free or as independent financially as I wanted to be, or as I had dreamed of becoming here in the US. And so I opened up myself into entrepreneurship, because I started looking around and I figured out that many of the people who have the kind of lifestyles that I admired and desired were entrepreneurs. None of them worked for anybody. So I decided to open up myself to entrepreneurship and forget everything else that I knew. So I think that many people sometimes, Lisa, think that, number one, you have to come from the right family, you know, a chosen family, you know, you had to grow up in the right, perfect neighborhood. You know, you had to go to the best schools and, you know, the private schools and stuff like that. And all of that is just not true. It really is not true, because if that was true, look around at all the people who are, you know, successful, who are the millionaires, the billionaires. If you go back and read their biographies, you see that at one point in time, they were poor, they were broke, they were struggling to make ends meet. Some of them had to sleep in their cars. Some of them had to drink water just to get by. Some of them live in shelters just to get by. So I think that the biggest thing for people is they know it, we sing it, we hear it every single day, but it's just it's not become real to them. It's like, even though they know it, they've not really awakened to that realization that, you know what, for me, I always say, because I'm Christian, I always say the kingdom is within you. It's not in a church building. It's not in a temple. It's nowhere. It's good to go to all of those places, but you have to wake up and suddenly realize that I can do this. I absolutely can, regardless of where I come from, who I am, where I've been. I can start from today and make a new ending.
Yes. And what are some of your favorite affirmations that you say to yourself? Do you have any that you say repeatedly?
I always say, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. You know, every day, in every way, I'm advancing. I like to say, I'm an express image of God, and so I can be, do, and have whatever I want in life. You know, I always look at myself in the mirror and go, you say, King Pinyin, you're fabulous, you know, just like you say, right? You know, you're an image of God. You have everything inside of you. You're going to equip, encourage, and empower people. So when I say those things out loud, it makes me wake up to myself, you know, because I'm looking at me and I'm going, I'm not afraid. You know, I'm a champion. You know, I'm the best of the best. You know, I could be, do, and have anything that I want in life. You know, the kingdom resides within me, so nothing can stand in my way. So I always tell myself stuff like things along those lines, you know, and if I'm afraid, because see, the thing is that I think, Lisa, one of the tricky things for many people is that they'll look at you and I and think that we have a fancy life. You know, it's just like, oh gosh, your life is all rosy and good. But what they fail to understand is that the reason why you and I are talking on this call today is because of how much we had to overcome. So we have all the struggles and challenges on a daily basis. The third voices are in my head telling me you're not good enough. How are you sure about what you're talking about? Who says this? You know, oh, you're going to fail. It's not going to work. You know, I have those voices just like everybody else. You have them in your head. But at the end of the day, you ask those voices to shut up, go to the back, because you're in charge. You're in control and you know who you are. It's like the king is in charge. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, how eloquently said. I love that, because it is true. A lot of people over the years, for me as well, it just thought I was hatched or I was born with a silver spoon and life was good. And I even remember for years people would say to me, oh, you wouldn't understand, or would tell me their trials and tribulations. And I would just pretty much, as one of my mentors said to me, is say, get over it, or just move on, and let's move forward. If we can't change the past, let's work on the present and the future. And people would get angry at me, and yet they all thought it was because I never had one, like I never had any challenges. I think the difference was that, like, just like you, we chose to take our challenges and make them our strengths and push us forward versus take it as our reason for not having. We made it a reason to do something about it and to have more. And that's just such a great coaching tip as well. And I know that you have absolutely done so much to change your life and have succeeded in so many ways. You know, what would be some of the things that if somebody's in a position where they're working and they don't think they have the time, or they don't think they have the knowledge, and you talked about that, and they don't even have the strength. You know, I think, well, I know at the beginning, I coach a lot of women, and I tell them to look in the mirror every day and to say, I am, and 50 I ams, like I am beautiful, I'm awesome, I'm outrageous, I'm nurture, I'm incredible, I am loving, I'm kind, you know, all these I ams. And like you had your little thing before, and I loved it because people think I'm a little crazy about it, but in the same token, it absolutely works, because if we don't empower ourselves, who's going to do it? Give us some ideas of what you can actually share with people to help them get to the point where they're able to say that to themselves and to do that for themselves.
You know, whenever I coach, Lisa, I approach coaching from a very broad sense. And I'm going to say 80% of my coaching is spiritually based, meaning I recognize the fact that all of us are spiritual beings on a physical experience here on earth. You know, the body, as you and I know it, is just a casing. You know, that's why the Bible would say your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, because you and I are a spirit. And I look at it now like I'm just borrowing this shell right now to live in, which is me, the spirit. And so 9 out of 10 times what I try to get with my coaching is to the root of the problem. Because see, I found out that people are never afraid for the reasons that they tell you. They're not struggling for the reasons that they tell you. It's all the stories that they tell themselves. So what I try to do with the coaching process is to dig deep and go right to the root, the core of their problems. And you know what I found out to be a problem when I look at the people that I've coached? It's mainly due to fear. And then the two forces that I know drive every human being is fear or faith. You know, but overwhelmingly, many people listen to the voice of fear as opposed to the voice of faith. So one of the things that I always do with my clients is I send them a form that gets them to answer some questions. I wish I could go through all of them on this call, but I really can't, because it's a long list of about 18 questions, but it addresses core areas in their lives, and depending on how they respond, I grade them on a scale of 100, and depending on what percentage they get, it guides me as to how to coach them. But primarily, what I try to do is to let people see that they really can do anything that they set their minds to, and I start by asking them if they're comfortable with what they're doing right now. And you find out that many people are working a job or doing something just to get by, just like I was, just to get by, just to pay the bills. And then you start digging deep and you find out that they've always wanted to be an actor. They've always wanted to be a comedian. They've always wanted to be a dancer. They've wanted to write a book and things like that. They've wanted to be, an entrepreneur or a philanthropist. And they're not doing all of that just because they're trying to make ends meet. So it's pretty vast. And I use me as an example, as a role model for them. Yeah, I would always say, hey, I came here from the cornfields of Africa. That's tens of thousands of miles away. And if I'm living, quote unquote, my American dream as of right now, I know that you too can live that lifestyle, because God does not play favorites. We're all the same. I just know who I am, and you have forgotten who you are.
Mm.
So when I coach and when you talk to people, I always like to go on a case by case basis, which is why right now I've kind of limited the number of people I coach because it became overwhelming for me trying to take all of these clients. So right now I try to limit it because I really want to be present and fully engaged and committed with them. I want to know what their goals are, what their dreams are, what their aspirations are, the things that hold them back. I want to know what's going on in their family because that's also very, very important. You know, I found out like in coaching somebody who's married that 9 out of 10 times the problems that they have in their business comes from the marriage. It's a relationship problem. And they're thinking, oh, my business is not growing. But well, it's because you're distracted with the relationship part of it. You know, so it's a whole package when I coach.
Absolutely. And there's no one of us or anything that does not include mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. It's everything combined. Now, I do want to have people just have an opportunity of knowing where to find you for the future. So if they want to be able to contact you and understand the mission and vision you're bringing to this world, and I know you have a new TV show and stuff, I want you to let them know what that information is now.
Absolutely, Lisa. Yes, I just recently added a TV talk show host to my list. You know, I'm an author, a speaker, a life and business coach, and a direct sales expert, and now I'm a TV talk show host. And there's a lot of information about everything that I do on my website, which is www.kingpinyin.com. So King. Pinyin is P for Peter, I, N for Nancy, Y for yellow, I for India, N for Nancy.com, kingpinyin.com, and all that they need to know about me will be there. Now, initially, when they log in, the current episode of my show is going to be airing, but they can always click enter to go into my website to see all that I do. I also host a women's conference that comes up twice every year. Next one is coming up in November, and they can look on that events and get all the details of that conference that's coming up.
Awesome. And also the information on the show will be on the website for Find to Fab, www.findtofab.com, and a recording of this will also be there so that they'll be able to connect with you from there. King, I want to thank you for being an incredible host, guest here for me and making this so easy and fun. And I love many of the points that you talked about, from understanding fear or faith and making sure people realize that it all does come from within. Your messages were clear and beautiful, and I know that it's going to help serve other people as you are now and making such a big difference out there.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show, and I'm so glad to be going down this path called life with you. As a friend, and I'm looking forward to many good things coming up in the future. And thank you so much for coming on my show. I still love that episode. So I want to thank you and to let you know that I am truly grateful and I honor you. And I'm so glad that you're impacting women all over the world. And I want to encourage you and to keep on fighting the good fight for us, for women. Because I believe that we can change the world. I actually know that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the messages that I always want people to understand. A lot of times women think others are catty, and I think that the life we've found, King, is that we are so supportive of each other and the mission that if people would just get rid of the me and make it we, there is so much more that we can do to serve each other and to live a happier, healthier life. So I want to thank you again for being here, and also our audience for joining us. And we look forward to having you with us next week on next Wednesday at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And be sure to text us at the keyword Find to Fab at 90210. Hit send. Follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter at Lisa Lieberman-Wang, and check out the website at findtofab.com. And we want to thank you again. Know that you're fab, fabulous, awesome, beautiful. Have an outstanding day. Thank you.
Now that I have your attention, ladies, when you need help breaking through the barriers that weigh you down, turning to food is not going to help, and starving yourself along with ongoing feelings of helplessness and frustration will not help either. The cycle of self-sabotage, disordered eating, and stinking thinking has to stop, and there is no better way than with other smart, business-savvy women like you who are making the change with best-selling author, licensed master NLP practitioner, and trusted guide, Lisa Lieberman-Wang of Find2Fab.com. Lisa will help you get that breakthrough you've been waiting for. Go to Find2Fabshow.com right now for all the details of the life-changing 10-week transformational program and the special listeners promotion. It's time to turn your life from feeling fine to being fab. Fabulous, awesome, beautiful. Go to Find2Fabshow.com now.